morning, ladies and gentlemen. We're back at break, and a young lady next to me, her name is Srividya. We connected on through Facebook, I believe, a messenger. We decided to do this interview for you about the art in the artificial intelligence space. So let's find out how this art thing works with artificial intelligence, because I think that's a quite interesting subject. Can you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Hi, Alex.
How old are you?
Thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm very thrilled. I am a New York-based artist, and I primarily work in three mediums: abstract photography, abstract expressionist paintings, and AI-generated art. And AI-generated art is obviously the most exciting part of my work. And I have an upcoming show at the Viridian Artists Gallery in Chelsea, starting on November 1st at 6 p.m. That's the opening night. And all my work in that show is predominantly going to be AI-generated work. All except for one work in that show was all made by artificial intelligence. And I'm asking the people that come to my show to tell me if they can find that work that was made by the human, me.
Okay. Is there a competition between humans and artificial intelligence yet for the art, or can people, really tell that that's a computer made, or it's actually human thought behind this?
That's a very interesting question, and to answer that in the best way, I'm going to think about how to explain this from a historical perspective, like how did we start with artificial intelligence in the first place. So the first thing in the AI history, the first thing that we started to get machines to do is to automate manual and tedious tasks for humans. So that's what we started with machines. And then the next evolution in that step was really to get computers to do things that were intuitive for humans, but not necessarily able to be coded. Like, for example, getting computers to recognize images and differentiate between images and differentiate between, say, a dog and a cat. That would be such an intuitive thing for humans to do. But then for a computer to learn that was a little challenging. But that was the second step in the evolution of AI. And the third step really is to imbue the machines with creativity. And that's where we are going next. And it's a very interesting transformation that is happening. And it's interesting also because the art world has not really caught up to think about what this means for art itself. Like how does artificial intelligent machines generating art, is that really art? And how do we define it? And how
lately did just saw the painting that disappeared after the auction, like shredded. So that's art created right in front of a human eye. So that's also art. He started painting on the streets, and they figured out that that's art. So it could be art, even if it's done by artificial intelligence. Still, someone wrote that code. Someone built that artificial intelligence. So we can compete. If the engine is better, maybe the art is better. So it's still a human behind this, maybe not directly, but indirectly. Whoever wrote that artificial intelligence formula maybe is an artist in this sense.
Yes, in some ways, absolutely. And when you think about AI-generated art, before a machine can start to generate art on its own, it has to see art from before. It has to have seen examples of art from before. So there was a paper that was published by the Google research team recently, in which they showed millions of images to this computer, and and they showed artworks from prior famous artists and famous art styles. And the computer now is able to generate art in that same style from before. And that's not
art, that's copying. What I'm saying is, like, when I'm talking about artificial intelligence. For me, the main aspect that I'm curious about is being a selfless. Like a human, let's say a mother, if she's protecting her child, she doesn't care much for her own life. She would care for a life of her child. The animal is protecting their baby. So there are selfless acts that humans or animals, like live tissue, can do. But I don't think computer is capable of, being selfless. Even though computer doesn't want to, live, there is, but it's still something that required to be biological rather than simulated. How the art is selfless act when you actually give something away from you, your soul, and put it on paper. Like how that artificial intelligence is capable of, capturing that soul-searching moment.
So art itself, the output from a piece of art, like you said, is something that deeply touches your soul. It has to touch your soul, and that's when we call a piece art. Okay. So absolutely. And some of the discussions that have been happening in the AI field itself in general, we have noticed that computers are very good at doing tasks, but they don't have certain level of empathy. And researchers all around the world are trying to figure out how to imbue machines with empathy. And that's the same question that can be applied to the art field itself, in saying, if we can figure out how to make machines have empathy, then we can also figure out how to make machines have creativity. Okay. So that is the next step in the process of art itself.
Can you tell my audience a little bit about your background? Seems like you are quite knowledgeable on the subject. How do you come up with that kind of knowledge?
Oh, sure. I predominantly have a technology background. I currently work in marketing science at Facebook, but before that I've led data science teams at telecom companies and at advertising agencies. And I started off with an electrical engineering undergrad, and in my grad school, I was doing research on unmanned planes way before machine learning was cool and way before we were talking about self-driving vehicles. So
there are some folks, like when we do, let's say, advertisement, some folks are very technical, and unless I show them very precise specifications and precise description, every little detail, they want to read through that stuff. And there are some people who don't want to see those nuisance in this little text. They just want to see a couple of images, whether they're in love with this subject or product or service, and they buy it or not. But some people are very visual, and some people very technical. You seems to come from a technical background, but at the same time you are in love with the art and the creative part. How those two things survive in you, and which one takes over?
Hard to say which one takes over, because if I did art full-time, then I will be searching for a hobby to do more analytical work. And then if I was doing only analytical work full-time, then art is my hobby. So it's hard to pick one.
In my case, let me reiterate my question. Let's say I love filming. Like as you see, I'm filming now our interview. So when I go with my wife to see a movie, I'm not like I just saw the Star is Born, Madonna's movie last week with my wife. So she's enjoying the movie and watching the story, and I'm looking, okay, this is color corrected, and this is how the frame was built, and I'm just looking at the process, how that movie was filmed as a filmmaker. So who comes first in you? Like, do you look, okay, this is technically correct, and that's a proper opening, and that's a proper composition and framing? Do you look at technical aspect first, and then okay, now I can enjoy the art piece? Or you first see the art itself, oh my God, this is Picasso, this is beautiful, this is amazing. And then you start, okay, he used that technique and he used that color, and that was the how he tells the story. Like, what comes first?
That is so fascinating, because that happens to me also. Absolutely. And I feel like you have a lot of self-awareness in terms of what you usually end up doing when you go watch movies, because you're a filmmaker. And that's kind of how our human mind functions.
When you watch the art,
Yes.
are you watching this as a technical person? What kind of technique they use, or are you watching first as the like artist? I admire that, and then you might.
So there are two things going on here. Our mind itself has two different parts. One part is completely analytical, and it processes all the inputs really quickly, and it moves on to the next. It wants to look at the next thing and analyze the next input. And then there's this other mind that we have that is more deeper at some level, and it's calm, it's quiet. And there are some art pieces that you see that when you look at that piece of art, your analytical mind stops. And you're appreciating that piece of art from a more deeper inner mind. And I think in some ways, all of us are searching for that piece of art that makes you stop processing and analyzing and just enjoy it from your inner mind. And maybe if you see that same movie one more time, you will because you're finished analyzing it, the second time you see it, you're probably going to enjoy it better.
I will probably find new things to technology. Okay, I'll try this in my film, and I'm gonna try. So every time I watch this, I watch the old famous movies, and I always find something new to learn as a filmmaker. I can use this technique. I can find something I missed the first time. But your answer took me to my next question. I want to talk about the artificial intelligence philosophy, like what comes and your art philosophy. What's the story behind that?
So I have answered that question before. So we have those two minds, the outer analytical mind and the inner quiet, calm, peaceful mind. When I make art, I want my...
What's your philosophy?
When I make art with the intention that whoever is looking at that piece of work immediately can stop processing and analyzing it and feel the piece that they have from inside. So that piece of art needs to speak to their inner mind, so that they are able to enjoy it. And I've noticed that when we look at realistic pieces of art, our outer mind quickly processes it, and we want to move on to the next piece. And I focus on the abstract because the abstract is something that your outer mind can't ever analyze fully. So in some ways, your inner mind has to step in there and explore what it means to your inner mind and how you feel about it. And so it brings out all of your tranquility, peace, and your feelings from inside that your outer mind could never have reached.
Okay, I'd like to close the interview with a question of implications of artificial intelligence, what it means for the future, how we can move from here, like where it takes you next.
Good question. So there are a few artists that are working in artificial intelligence space. I am one of the few pioneers, but as an art community, we have a long way to go from here. We are still trying to understand. So when we think about AI-generated art, a couple of questions come to mind. First of all, what we have to rethink and reevaluate what is art and what is good art, especially as it relates to AI-generated art. So we have to go back and redefine those things. And then third, how do art critics evaluate whether a piece of AI-generated art is good or not?
But it's very simple. You go to Sotheby's or Christie's and you see the pricing, and whatever sells at a higher price and faster, probably that's one metrics that you can consider. The other metric, if you can put it on Instagram and you get millions and billions of views, that probably have something to do with the popularity and the numbers. If you do art and a famous critic will maybe write a piece about it and it's end up in magazines, are probably important people. If Lady Gaga talks about it or Donald Trump talks about your piece of art, maybe you touch some souls that are important to some people. So there are certain metrics that can, not one of them is a guarantee, but a combination, like a Facebook algorithm or Google algorithm. it's not fair, but it's the fairest out there right now, I would say. And if they find a better formula to define art, maybe it could be altered eventually.
Cannot debate with that. Obviously, that all of what you said makes sense. I know Christie's is auctioning their first AI-generated piece next week, and that's going to be exciting because we're going to see what happens with that. And that's the first piece that's ever being auctioned in the world that was AI generated. So that's a first step into AI generated art becoming more mainstream, because art critics are now taking notice of this new genre of art. But
it's basically you judging the person who wrote that algorithm, the team that wrote that algorithm. That's, let's say, another team wrote another artificial intelligence engine, and they could be more creative than the first one. So it's at the end of the day, it's maybe, if not directly, but it's the people who behind that. Someone, if you look at the particular company or particular organization, there is John, Alex, whatever, Cindy, some actual people behind that who actually build that.
Excellent point. And that is why defining what good art means when it relates to AI-generated art is very important, because you can just have algorithms compete with each other one after the other, and you would never know which one is good and which one is not. Yes, of course, if Christie's is auctioning your work versus somebody else's algorithm that nobody cares about, we can kind of say that work is better because Christie's cares about that work. However, I don't really know if the aesthetics behind AI-generated art have been fully defined yet. Yes, we are starting to get to that point, and we're asking the right questions, but as an art community, we haven't really completely defined the aesthetics behind AI-generated art. And it's going to take some time, because if you think about traditional photography and traditional art, it went through several phases, right? It went through, there was Impressionism, and then Henri Matisse and Paul Cézanne, they started with Impressionism, then they moved farther ahead to Abstract Expressionism, and it progressed from one to the other. There was Cubism, there was Futurism, all of those different things. So all of those isms were some ways for us to define what is good art and what is art within that ism. And AI-generated art is a new genre of art, and we don't really know if it is going through it's going to go through those progression of phases yet.
In 50, 100 years, we'll certainly know. We'll see what stays in people's mind. Let me ask you, if audience would like to buy some of your work, and maybe we can show a piece. I just saw a piece. Can we have it? Can you bring it to us so we can show to the audience what it looks like? And thank you so much. And let's see, guys. Okay, so you cannot see the artist, but that's the piece. What's the name of it? What's the name of the piece? No, keep let them see. You want to talk about it?
Yes, I would love to talk about this piece. So I forgot the name of the piece, actually.
It's okay. We can put it in subtitles. Just talk about your piece.
So this is an abstract piece, and it was part of a show at Viridian Artist Gallery a couple of months ago. We had a 50-year anniversary show, and this was the only AI-generated piece in that show. And the interesting part about...
You did it with your own computer? Or
Yes, I did it with my own computer. And the interesting part is I don't want people to look at this piece and think about it. I want them to stand 2 feet away and look at it and tell me what they feel. So it's interesting. It is weird. You don't know what is going on. You can probably see some faces that are hidden in... Oh, I remember the title of this piece now. It's called Unseen and Unheard. Okay. So there are unseen faces that are hidden somewhere in this piece here. You can see some noses somewhere. You can see some ears somewhere. It's just a combination of people and body parts. No, people that you may know, but you never see.
Wow.
And about the unheard piece comes from what they say. A lot of people say really cool stuff, and important stuff in the world, but they never have that big voice from which they can come out and share it with the world. So this piece was dedicated to them. And as I started talking about it, I remembered it made me feel something, and from there I started to remember what it was called. And that's what I mean. Sometimes your analytical mind is processing stuff, but it doesn't stop there. When you pause for a moment and then start to look at a piece and feel it, suddenly everything comes back.
Can you tell, please, my audience, if folks would like to buy this piece or maybe look at some other work, or maybe you have like Instagram page or Facebook page by any chance, like where people can see your art?
Thanks. I have a Facebook page. It is called Art by Srividya, and they can also buy my pieces by contacting the Viridian Artist Gallery, and they represent me, so you can buy anything from my page from my website. My website is sriphoto.com, sriphoto.com, and of course, you can also contact me directly from there.
Thank you, guys.